Good evening. Now let's start our talk show episode 87. The only thing standing between you and your dream is the will to try and believe that is actually possible. It's a beautiful quote quoted by Joel Brown. So with this quote, I would like to begin our talk show named Conversation with Consultants with episode 87 of our guest talk series. Good evening, everyone. I am Rima Kumari, ECR coordinator of SKANG, and I am your host for today's talk show. Before begin our talk show, let me briefly introduce SK Associates and Group. We are an ISO certified management consulting firm registered under the MSMED Act 2006 with the Government of India. Our mission is to providing consulting service to student entrepreneurs globally, covering areas such as compliance, operations, marketing, research and development, human capital, strategic, and operations. Our passion lies in helping these budding entrepreneurs bringing their dreams to life and contribute to global economics growth. And top in entrepreneurship is a catalyst for change and innovation. It's a powerful force that can reshape industries, transforms lives, and make the world better place. We are committed to supporting student entrepreneurs on their journey, equipping them with the tools, knowledge, and network they need to succeed. Now, before I begin our show, let's take a moment to introduce our guest for today. It gives us immense pleasure to welcome Miss Lisa Singh, solopreneur and independent mediator and consultant of Solopreneur, to this special event. We are truly honored by your presence today and we are delighted to have you here in this talk show to share your insight with us. We would like to start the interview. Our first question for you: what is an MVP and why it is important for startups?
So I have to tell you, I had to look up the term MVP because it's not something I've normally used. But to me, the MVP, this is your plan, what you are. It can be an idea, it can be a physical thing, it can be any range of things. But it's when you put that idea into a plan and a model of how you're going to put it into action. So for me, I work in conflict resolution, and also I started out in intercultural communication. So my first MVP was my training plan and my model of mediation. That model is what I've got that I can say, this is the framework that I'm going to work under, and then I can implement that in many different places. So I have that plan, that whole thought out process to use, and that it becomes what I normally call a model. And a model is basically an MVP. So that's my answer.
Great. Moving with the next question: how much does it typically cost to build an MVP?
So there it again depends on what you want to build. If you're working with an idea like I do, it doesn't cost me anything. It's all up here. And so it comes from my mind to my paper. That costs nothing. If it's a product, then it may be the construction costs. What am I going to have to build it? I have done those too because I took a whole course in product development, and building my little prototype was so important to the whole process. But the main thing is knowing, what is the need I'm filling? How am I going to, what it is that I'm going to do to fill that need? And how am I going to implement it? Those three things are all part of that process. So yeah, costs depend, but you can start with nothing.
Nice. Your next question is: can I build an MVP without coding skills?
I think we all have skills. To say that we can't, but I don't hold a skill, everyone holds a skill. Even my 5-year-old or 3-year-old has a skill. If your skill is simply walking or lifting, weights, that's a skill. So don't think that you have no skills. You may not have specific skills, but you can go get those skills. So when I started out, I have to say that I was mostly what I call a trailing spouse in the field of intercultural communication. I was a wife following my husband, and we lived overseas in Indonesia for 9 years. While I was living there, I did my first so called MVP because they hired me to write an article about Patola influence. And you all know about Patola fabrics, I hope. Patola influence on Indonesian fabrics. So I got hired to do a project. That was my first time. And that skill, I had to also take that and gain knowledge. So I read books. I went to the library. The library didn't cost me a thing. I talked to people. I created a network. And from that, I wrote an article. It wasn't my best work, but it wasn't bad and it was fun to do. And I got paid. So, hey, that was exciting. So, when my husband passed away in 1995, I knew I'm going to have to work because my children were still young. And so I decided that I wanted to teach other people how to live in foreign countries because I'd done it so well. And my first husband was from India. And I traveled to India. I'd lived in India. I'd lived in Indonesia. So I knew how to do that. That was my skill I was starting with. And so then I decided I needed to hone that skill. I needed to develop that skill because some of the things that I knew, I didn't know the words for those. That's where education comes in. I went back to school and studied for my master's in intercultural communication so I could have the language that fit the skill. So sometimes we have to take the skill that we have and what we want to do, and we have to enhance it and find ways to enhance it. In my case, studying cost a little bit of money, but it was worth the investment. But then, as I was learning, I did not have one thing that's important. And I think this is important for your journey in business. When I started out in the field, I didn't have access to the international corporations that needed my skill. So, access is very important, how to gain access. So, what I did, and as I was learning, I learned that conflict resolution was also something that many people in my field struggled with. So, what I did was I found out that there was a community mediation center and they offered free mediation training, conflict resolution, as long as I volunteered once a month for a year or 2 years, something like that. I said, great, I love the cost, free. I developed the skill and I took it even further. That's how I got into the field of conflict resolution because I did that so well and my skills in intercultural communication translated. So now I had a place to put my skills and to grow them. And then I also found a place in training because that's what I wanted to do. So, as an underling and a trainee, I got trained to do the training I wanted to do, and I learned those skills. So, everything builds one on another when you have an intention and you start following that passion.
It sounds good, ma'am. Um, Moving with the next question. What are the initial features of a successful MVP?
For me, you have to be very focused. That you should observe first. You have something you want to do. Observe, is it going to fit into marketplace? Take that assessment. Talk to people, create networks, and start talking to people in the field. Don't be afraid to just reach out and talk. Even if you're like shy or you don't feel confident, stuff that down. Just go out and do it. I always tell people assume you belong. Assume immediately that you belong and you can do it. And that will start you on your way. But then have a good plan in place. Start to observe what's needed, Figure out what you want to have accomplished at the end, and then write those or develop those steps about how you're going to get there. So having that good plan in place. If it turns out, as in the case of the first product I did, which was the cultural training, I didn't have access. Put it to the side when you find out that that's not going to work. It will come back later, because everything that I have ever done that I put aside, years later, it came back and became a reality. Maybe in a little different way, but nothing went to waste. None of my effort went to waste. It's just being able to be flexible. You have to be flexible. Don't lament that it didn't work. You know, when you were learning how to walk, you stood up, you fell down. You're going to stand up and fall down a lot. Just keep getting back up and change the direction, but don't let go of what you already had. So that's it.
Great, ma'am. Moving with the next question. What are the key challenges in build an MVP?
So, one of the challenges I already said, you have to have access to the market you want to connect with. So, that's a key challenge. Sometimes that challenge even starts in the development of your product, because if you don't have access, you also may have trouble developing the need that meets what the client needs, or the meets that what your customer needs. So know that, that access can be a stumbling block. But again, don't let that go, though. You can come back. You will still learn in the process. Other stumbling blocks are really getting to people to know you. It takes time. My business depends on my network. I don't worry about marketing as much as I used to. It's my name and my network, but that's taken years to build. It's taken years to build credibility, to say, well, when I started out, everybody looked at me, well, she was just a housewife. What does she know? Then I have to prove that I know it, but I don't want to be pushy. I want to be authentic. I think authenticity is important. It's important to say I know. It's important to admit when I don't know. I found that that's very helpful, because then people are willing to teach me. If I show that, if I try to pretend like I know everything, they're going to push me to the side. Arrogance doesn't help. So that's a stumbling block. Our attitude, our way of thinking is the strength, and making sure that we have the right attitude that's authentic, that's real, that really connects with people. I also, when I create my network, I never think that one person is useful and another person is not useful. I hate that thinking. It is one of, to me, the most injurious ways of thinking when you're building a business, because every single person you meet is valuable to you. They may not be able to help you in the moment, but I cannot tell you how many times I have met and developed a relationship with people, and 10 years later, they came and hired me for something. And if I had let them go and never kept them as contacts, but for me, contacts are friends. So I think of it a little bit differently than a lot of it. It's not about usefulness; it's about caring. And I think if we care in this world, if we really believe in other people, we build a better world. I mean, that's what business was all about. It's been that way for generations and generations. It's always been a skill or something I can do, and you're willing to give me something for it. And that trade has gone back for hundreds of thousands of years. And I was thinking about it, think about it like, maybe I make a good cup of chai, right? And I look and I see, this was many years ago. One thing that I loved about riding on the train in India was having a cup of chai in a clay pot. I love that clay pot. And I hate that it disappeared and went to styrofoam cups. That's terrible. But that clay pot, that was a really huge innovation, that somebody looked at the train stations and said, wow, look, all those passengers could use a cup of chai. And they developed their first MVP was just a clay cup with chai in it. That was it. And that's what they started with. And then that blossomed to people, serving tea all over the place. And many, many people benefited from that. So that's the way I look at it.
It sound good, ma'am. Moving with the
Oh,
next
wait, I
question.
just wanted to add one more thing. I'm sorry, because I had remembered that one of the things I wanted to say is that we are also ourselves. Sometimes our own skill and strength can be our own weakness, and that can be a stumbling block. And so make sure that you know yourself well. So, like, one of my strengths is that I am very versatile. I can jump to one thing, I can relate things. But the weakness is that I may lose focus. And so think about your own self also. Are you the stumbling block? Are you in the way of your own success? Because at some point you'll have to think that way. Sorry. I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, ma'am. Moving with the next question. How do I measure the success for my MVP?
Now, that also is you have to define what success is to you. If success is making $1 million, then you're successful when you get $1 million. It's quantitative. But there's also qualitative success. For me, I have never looked for the dollar amount because for me, putting back into my community is very important. I'm willing to do a lot of pro bono work for that. So I measure success by how much I do, how many connections I make. And I can say, I feel like I'm very successful. I may not have $1 million. I may struggle for income, but I'm successful because those are the parameters I set for myself. And that's what I wanted to accomplish. And I have been able to move to the top tier of people in my field in everything that I've done. So that to me, that's great. I'm happy with that. So decide what you're happy with.
Great, ma'am. Moving with the next question. What are the most important metrics to track for an MVP?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
What are the most important metrics to track for an MVP?
So I think the most important metrics, and it's all about measuring, is really being clear on what you want to accomplish. And when you create those objectives, what do I want it to look like in the end? Then you start to know how to measure. So, I should think about specifics. It's that making sure that you know about the specific things. So when I develop that product plan or any plan that I want, then I know like who I want to contact, maybe how many people I want to contact. I create those goals and objectives that make them measurable. Um, and so I think it is, again, sometimes when it's qualitative, and by qualitative, I mean it's based on the relationship or it's based on that. It's difficult to measure, but find a way to measure that. And also, don't forget in the metrics, because many, many people remember this. They think of the end goal, but they don't look at the small successes. A small success can be maybe I did not get people to move all the way to my end, but I got people to move 3/4 of the way. Recognize that small success because then you can analyze what's holding back getting to the end product and then be flexible and revise. So again, metrics are going to depend whether it's quantitative, which is numbers, or qualitative, but being clear about what that goal is and how you're going to measure getting to that goal is what you want to do. Those are your metrics.
Nice. Your next question is, what are the best way to promote my MVP?
So again, I am very strong in networking. I think networking and we should never forget that a business is a community. It is part of the community. It is very people oriented. It's I think some people get the idea that, oh, if we're in business, we just leave people out of it, but we can't, because it is very relational. So I think those relationships are one of the most important things you have. And to build those relationships, you have to have trust. You have to show that you are who you are, that authenticity, being real is so important to those networks. Um, Really having a clear vision, and also being able to communicate clearly, because a lot of misunderstandings come for not being able to really clearly communicate who you are and what you're all about to the other person, and being able to find ways to work with people who are very different. So all of those things. There are lots of other ways. There's the internet, there are social networks. I used all the social networks. I was big on I go so way back before the internet. So before the internet, it was just the people around you, right? Then the internet came, and you had greater ways of. In the 90s, I was one of the first adopters of social networks, because the well kind of started it, and then we had free internet access in our home, and we joined with the free internet access to have discussion groups. All of them were text based. There were no images. The images came later at the end of the 90s, but all of those text based started to build relationships outside my home. They were there for me, those networks, to help me when I got started. And then, so all of the social networks, I met the most fascinating people when I started on Twitter. I got invited to a group to do training for people who were sight impaired, all over the world. I did leadership training with them. I did so many different projects, and many of them I consider my good friends, and I have never seen them in person. So think about that. Think about those beauty of the social networks you have, because that is a great way to start networking and start getting to know people. And you have web pages just to sort of, that to me is not the most important. It's like, okay, have it, but I don't think it generates as much for me as my network does. My network generates all of my opportunities.
Wait, ma'am. Moving with the next question. How do I build MVP in a short term frame?
So you already have it. Everyone has a skill. I don't care. Everyone has one. So you can build one just on anything that you know or you do. It can be like, if you go for a simple project. I have a friend, very, very dear friend. She was working, heading up a university, and then she lost her job. But she had to pay her bills, and she had to do something quickly. So she remembered that her mother taught her how to make fudge. So she took that fudge and she found the marketplace, and she went down on the weekends and sold fudge. For 3 days, she made fudge. And the rest of the weekend, she sold that fudge, and that paid her bills. I mean, it didn't give her a great, great income, but it helped her survive. Those survival skills of knowing what you can do and then just offering it, putting it out there, that's worth everything. And that's everything about who we are. Every single person has a skill. So I think you can do it as quickly as you need to, and have a longer plan for something else, but you can do it.
It sounds good, ma'am. Moving with the next question. What inspired you to become an independent mediator and consultant?
So Really, at that time, as I said, my husband passed away, and I knew that I needed to have a profession. And for me, I felt like I have this skill in crossing cultures, so I want to do that. So I went to school, I developed that. But I also had this passion for seeing people being able to communicate. So when I was trying to decide what to do in my life, I was listening to the news, and I heard this man, Sulil Bushrui, talk about. Um, he was talking about Wordsworth and the annotated version of Khalil Gibran. And he was so fascinating. He could recite any poet in a minute. And I said, wow, I really want to meet this person. And at that time, I was trying to decide between two fields to study. One was intercultural communication, the other was conflict resolution. So I called up the radio station because I knew the woman who was the radio announcer. And I said, well, who was he? Because I want to meet him. And she said, he's Jim Malarkey's father in law. And Jim Malarkey is the head of intercultural communication at Antioch. I said, oh, okay. So I called, and she gave me his number. I called him up, and he said, come over for tea. Oh, I went for tea and talked to this really fascinating person. And I decided this is what I have to do. I'm going to do intercultural communication. And then in studying intercultural communication, I learned that a lot of people in the field have conflict. So again, I told you that I learned mediation, and I got passionate about it because it was everything that really spoke to my core beliefs, that I have always believed in people. I believe that people are wonderful, fascinating, and creatures, and we can learn so much, even from people that we think, don't fit our mold. I mean, I remember the first trip I had to India, and we have a farm out near the Tarai in UP, Uttar Pradesh, and there I met the woman who was working in the field. She took me to her hut. She was so proud because she had two chulas her husband built, and she was very proud of those. And sat down with her, and she really, really taught me so much in life. So we can learn from so many people if we're willing to listen. My big thing and everything that I do is that listening is key. Even in product development, you need to listen to people to find out what the need is. You need to listen. You need to set yourself aside, set your preoccupations, your issues, what you think needs to happen aside, and just listen. Because then you can switch and you can open up to a wider perspective. So anyway, I get excited, especially if you talk about listening and people. I get excited.
Great, ma'am. Moving with the next question. How do you help entrepreneurs resolve disputes and conflicts?
My main thing is because I like to work at a prevention level. I like to work first on giving people those skills to be able to listen to one another and really talking with them about those skills. And I have found that managers and leaders who really pay attention to communicating effectively have fewer disputes and fewer misunderstandings. There's a lot of misunderstandings that happen with cultural differences. So being aware of what those cultural different ways of thinking are really helpful to that process. Um, Being able to set aside judgment, like I said, and just listen. So that's where I start. If there's a conflict, then I'm willing to jump in and start to help that process and help that conversation take place. But I think that everyone has the ability to resolve conflicts. So just giving them the skills of knowing what those processes are, I think that makes a huge difference.
Nice. Your next question is, what are the most common challenges faced by entrepreneurs in the business?
I think our biggest challenge is showing that we're relevant, showing and establishing relevance. Um, and everyone has their perspective. I mean, businesses are busy trying to hit their bottom line. They also have to save money. So they're not going to want to go and spend money on you unless you really have relevance to them. So establishing that relevance, establishing that, and being able to make it broad. I mean, I've learned that starting from one product, I have to be versatile in how I lay that out. I have to be willing to change and adapt to what the marketplace is. So that willingness to change and adapt helps. But then at the same time, I also have to get people to know me, and that I think takes a long time. It's the most tiring and longest part of the whole journey is helping people get to know who you are and getting people to know that you can do the job. I always make sure that when I commit to something, that I follow through, that I produce in the way that they wanted, and that I take feedback. And on that feedback, whatever feedback I get, that I take that feedback and make sure that that feedback has helped me do a better job the next time. So if somebody tells me I did a terrible job, I've got to pay attention to that. Why was it? Was it me? Was it the circumstance? Any of those things, I've got to pay attention to that, and then I've got to not be afraid to rebuild the relationship. And I have been turned down. I have been, let's say, criticized very deeply. But I have learned that if you stay in there, no matter what, that same person will rehire you for something else. You get in. So it doesn't mean that it's all over and the relationship is gone. So you have to take those ego elements of yourself and set them aside and say, no, here's how I can fix it. Here's what I can do. I also put my weaknesses up front when I am with working with someone, and I will tell them, you need to give me deadlines, because if you don't give me deadlines, I might procrastinate. I need a deadline. So let's make sure that before we start, you've given me good deadlines. So knowing myself, know yourself, know where your weaknesses are, so you can put them up front in the conversation, so that when it comes to those, they know how to work with it. So that's another.
Great, ma'am. Moving with the next question. What are the benefits of mediation in resolving business disputes?
I really do believe that mediation is a huge, huge, wonderful asset. And the thing is, mediation, it depends, because there are so many different models. So the models are going to depend. I work under a relational model, which is much more about the relationship. And so the strength that I find in that model, some of the other models are more problem solving, getting to yes, making sure that you look at the interests of both parties. And that's also very instrumental and good. And I promote that as well. But I mostly prefer the relationship model, because I believe that a lot of the communication is falling apart because we have different ways of thinking, and we don't know, in our own way of pattern of thinking, we don't know that we can switch to something else. And so it is learning to switch back and forth that makes a huge difference. And it can be the ways that business does it, especially on the intercultural journey. I find that a lot of the conflicts has to do with different ways of thinking. What is negotiation? When I negotiate for a product, what needed to be there? If my negotiation style says that once we've come to an agreement, that is just a beginning and we still need to keep working on it, then I'm working, and then I negotiate my contract with somebody who comes from a culture is, once we've written out the agreement, that's it. It's written in stone and nothing changes. Those two have a lot of conflicts, because then the people that believe that a contract is a contract and that's it, They don't like if somebody's trying to change it, but they're like, no, we just reached a beginning understanding. That's what we wrote. That's not the final product. So, that causes a huge difference. But that's all thinking, that's all cultural. And it has nothing to do with the people. And so when you can start laying that out there, you start to learn to work with those differences.
It sounds good, ma'am. Moving with the next question. How do you help entrepreneurs develop negotiation strategies?
So again, this is all the same thing. You really need to know before going into a negotiation, like what it is you want to have accomplished. What is we talk about the WIFM, what's in it for me? Like, what is your strategy? What do you want to have accomplished? What is the worst scenario? What is the best scenario? Having a clear view of like, what are those stages? I'm not going to go beyond this. I'm not going any further in this negotiation. I mean, it's as simple as going to the market, right? Or trying to trying to get a ride home in a rickshaw. That's it's always my good example of negotiation. It's right there in the marketplace because I have to decide how much am I willing to pay for that ride and what is the most I'm going to pay, and what is the least I'm going to pay. I have to know those things. So that's what you need to know when you go into any negotiation. But I think it's also good to have looked at a lot of different. I used to work with this model that was put online, and it was it was mainly for negotiation. And it was a wonderful online tool because you could start to look at all the different aspects of the negotiation. What are the different parts? Because there's not just one part. Like I might be in a negotiation for a business, I might be able to be more flexible with one area of negotiation and less flexible with the other. So, really analyzing not just the whole overall whole, but the individual parts can help us get to a solution much easier.
Nice. Moving with the next question. What are the key factors in build trust between business and partners?
So building building trust is being honest, being transparent. You can be honest, but if you're not transparent, I think we really have to open up a little bit more about um, some of our innermost thinking. We have to be willing to impart that. Sometimes it's difficult because, especially with guarding our intellectual property or all of those things, it becomes a problem for others. Although I have always taken the view that no one can implement the way that I do. And so I'm willing to share a lot more of my expertise than a lot of other people. I find that helps me build trust because I'm willing to share that. And because I know that if someone else implements it, it's not going to be the same. So it's okay. It's, I can give you almost everything, but it's not going to be the same. And so that makes a difference. So I would say try as much as you can to be very honest and very open, being open about your no as well as your yes, being open about your reservations, being open about our weaknesses. That's sometimes the hardest part for us is to let our weaknesses be out in the open. But when you're able to do that, it gives you great strength. It actually is when you are more secure in who you are as a company, as an individual, it is easier to let out our weaknesses. So think of showing weaknesses as a sign of strength and not as a sign of weakness. A lot of us get into that learning where, oh, no, I don't want to show my weaknesses. But I don't think that that's true because that really helps me know better how I can help you. It helps me know better how I can complement you because I think we all have strengths and we all have places that we need to build. And so it's a huge asset to know those. But I can say there's nothing more than being true to your word, making sure you follow through. If you don't follow through, be willing to say, why didn't you? I definitely didn't follow through as quickly with Remo because you get busy and things, but say that. Say, I was busy or I wasn't feeling well. Let somebody know what was holding you back so that you can follow through the next time and bring and give the people what they need. So all of that, I think, to me is so important. Yeah.
Great, ma'am. This is your last question for today's session. What are the most common mistakes entrepreneurs make in conflict resolution?
In conflict resolution, I think the biggest mistake is not really asking enough questions. Not asking enough questions to clarify. Sometimes people come to agreement and they think, oh, we agreed. This is what it was. Only to find out later that they were thinking about it in a different way. That they, even if I say manager, how you think a manager is based on your experience. A manager might be someone who is constantly talking, watching what you do, helping you do things. Or a manager can be somebody who's hands off, who says, this is what needs to be done, go do it. And then, waits for you to just do it, doesn't tell you anything. If you have those two different styles of what a manager is, and you start to, agree on a project and you're working together, you'll start getting frustrated with each other because you're not following through the way that you expect somebody does. So you didn't think about that. You didn't think to ask stupid questions. People are afraid to ask questions because they think, oh, it's going to sound like a stupid question. Ask stupid questions. Many years ago, I started facilitating. I took my skills and became a facilitator. And I worked with a company called Idea Connection. So what they put out challenges of different, like a big company, say, agri agrarian kind of company or a chemical company, they have challenges that their teams of experts haven't been able to solve. And they want it solved so they can get the product. So what they do is they go to this company called Idea Connection. And Idea Connection finds four experts in the field, maybe they're in academics, puts them together with a facilitator, that's me. And my role is to help them all talk to one another to find a solution to the problem. And in that role, the one thing that I learned was that oftentimes they're not communicating with one another and they're not paying attention and they're starting to get in conflict because this one PhD guy says, well, I know all the answers because I'm the academic, and the other one over there says, well, I know them differently because I'm the big academic here. And getting them to talk to one another, that becomes my role, helping them communicate. And one of the ways I do that is asking stupid questions. And I can ask stupid questions because I'm not a scientist. So they accept it. And when I ask the stupid question, all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait, we have a great idea. And they find a solution. I mean, we found that our team was very successful, or my teams were very successful at winning the competition because I asked stupid questions.
It sounds good, ma'am. Moving ahead, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to Miss Lisa Singh for being our guest for today at Conversation with Consultants. Your presence and engagement helped to make this event successful. Thank you for providing insights into your exciting journey. Further, we would also like to thank our audience for listening patiently throughout the event. Thank you everyone for joining with us today and hope that everyone gains some knowledge from this event. Looking ahead, we are excited to announce that our next episode 88 of Conversation with Consultants will held be soon. We hope to see you all there. We look forward to reconnecting with you again. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us all social media handles to stay connected with us. Goodbye and have a great day ahead. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye. So